Okay, so we're sitting in a hearse, and we're on a ghost tour right now.
Now you're riding in an old 1990 hearse, and that means that this one's had about 3,500 dead bodies in the back. You are probably about the 2,500 tourist, give or take. So there's been about 1,000 more dead bodies than live bodies back there as of this point in time. So the little coffin rollers under your feet were made to make it easy to slide the dead in and out, and the little rows with little holes in it are called coffin locks to keep the coffins from sliding about.
I didn't do it.
I just recently discovered this new cemetery. There's many of them across the city. Some have actually been built over.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the Native Americans were here for thousands of years. And we know that because, well, there's several little bits of data that we got over the years. One of them was that someone who was drilling for petroleum, and this was a mining engineer, and he went through this area, and he was able to date the ages of the different levels. And he dug through an Indian burial mound and determined that by carbon-14 dating, the bottom of the burial mound dated to 5,500 years ago. And that wasn't the oldest one, so there's many older than that. And those records have been kept over the years. In the beginning, they didn't believe them. They didn't think Indians were here that early. It turns out they're even here much earlier. And sometimes it got so bad that they had to drag the bodies from the houses and just bury them wherever they could because people couldn't come fast enough to bury them. 1820, we lost a tenth of our population within a few days. And they scattered the graves all over the city, and then as the city grew, houses were built over these graves. And there's bodies everywhere now. 270 years ago, they buried 1,400 people on the corner of Lowell and Oglethorpe Street. And that's where the Collins Corner Bar is, and the Wright Square Cafe, and these little boutiques and restaurants and shops and residences, all built on top of these graves. In 2006, someone bought a piece of real estate out here. They planned to build something out here, but then this black guy comes out of the woods and says, "You can't bury people in there, or you can't build here because it's full of graves. There's dead bodies everywhere in here." And people said, "Are you crazy? There's no cemetery back there. There's no city plan for a cemetery." He said, "No, we did it ourselves years ago." I'm like, what? So they sent people out there, and holy crap, there are 400 dead bodies in the dirt back in there. That's where we're gonna go. There was a railroad that ran out here, and these old black guys worked on the railroad. They loaded and unloaded the boxcars. And so they had a little work camp village out here, and they built these little tiny little houses.
Okay, I'm getting creepy vibes.
I would definitely get creepy vibes out here.
Oh, wow. Oh, and the insects buzzing.
Yeah.
This is where we get murdered. This is where our lives end. Bye. This is where he skins us.
Yeah, this is the old black guy that came out of the woods and said, "Hey, you can't be developing this." And this is the cemetery. See, we're in the cemetery here. That's their little church. They had 50 of these little houses. We're going to build 100 of them.
So funny.
And it was the old railroad. The old. Yeah, the last house. This was torn down in 1967. And when they tore down all the houses, all the black folks left, and even the church was demolished, where they worshipped.
Why?
Well, because they were, they no longer needed stevedores on the ships. Now we have containers. They're all pre-packaged.
Right.
But back then they had to literally load and unload every boxcar.
There's unmarked graves. Like, we could dig up a body. We could dig up a body right now. We could see like a hand, like a skeleton hand, poking out of the ground.
Well, you see mounds in here, and so that may have been part of it too.
Oh my gosh.
Well, the trees are growing out of their bodies.
Yes. So.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, you can just go
like
way
I'm gonna
back
accidentally
in here.
kick a head or something.
And sometimes somebody came in here and picked up all the pots and pans and threw them away. But those are the way they marked the graves, you see.
Oh no.
They had no headstones. They just had the
I'm seeing things.
So I mean, it goes way back in.
Yeah, I'm gonna put on my...
I mean, I don't need to take you all the way back in here, but I just want to get you a sense for what's in here. This is all graves.
Can I turn this on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this some kind of paranormal thing?
No, it's a flashlight.
Do you guys hear the bats?
Yes.
I like
Very
it.
high pitched. You know, I know mice like to eat the bones because they have
You're more
calcium.
afraid of the mice than I am of
Need
the
little mice in their diet there.
Sounds fascinating.
Isn't that so cool?
Yeah.
Alright, so this is one place. This is one out of many, many, many.
Okay.
See, I was looking at that. I'm like, is that a body bag?
They didn't have plastic back then.
I know.
Oh, I know.
I was just like, I'm just being my paranoid self. Like, oh my god, this is where they are.
Probably where drug addicts come to do drugs.
Sorry. I saw a bug. It's a bug.
Oh no, it's a brother.
We all need to pee. We can make a pee circle where we lean against each other's backs. Just make a pee circle. And interlock our arms.
Oh my god.
And share some tissues.
Share some tissues. That's your seat cover. I didn't know that. My lady angels.
Yeah, my butt is cushioned.
My lady angels.
Butt cushioned. Sweet little butt cushion.
No, all this ghost stuff that we, participate in here on the tour and, have some fun with, that all really began as a reaction against the Enlightenment. And, the Enlightenment period was, I'm not going to give you a lecture on that, but, that was the time period when science became triumphant over, mysticism.
Yeah.
And, so basically sort of the modern scientific approach was the popular thing. And there was a real movement against mysticism and spiritual stuff and ghosts and all that stuff. But around the middle of the 1800s, there was a reaction against it. It was like people were, well, there's got to be an exception to all this. So I was like, well, we don't believe in ghosts, but, well, what about this weird phenomenon, And so you had people like Edgar Allan Poe, for example.
I love him.
Who wrote about spiritual things and ghosts and mysticism and such.
The black cat.
I'll take you to another cemetery called Laurel Grove Cemetery. It's a very spooky spot. But before we get there, I think I'll show you a few other little things along the way. This is the Pirate's House. Now this is a place where they would get men drunk in the bar. This was an old building built in the early 1700s. And they would get the men drunk in the bar, and when they were unconscious, they would carry them on a stretcher through a secret underground tunnel, and then they were sold into forced labor. This is where it was done. This is a whole scam operation here.
Wow.
See those windows down there?
Yeah.
There's a rum cellar down there. And then that's the underground basement, and they would carry the bodies through a tunnel. There's a ghost with glowing red eyes that lives at the Pirate's House upstairs. And people see the spirits go in and out of the tunnels downstairs. This is the Keogh house straight ahead. Now the man of the house had 10 children here. They were all aged from 5 to, over 20. And the little 5-year-olds were 2 identical twin boys. They lived on the 3rd floor. And they liked to play hiding games. And one day when they were playing their game, they went in the fireplace and pulled themselves up in the chimney so no one could see them. And then the servants walked in, lighting the hot coal fires, and the boys died a gruesome death. Mr. Keogh returned home, and he had to perform the grisly task of pulling them out of the chimney, their little charred remains. And he said, never again will we have a fire in this house. So to ensure that, he had cast iron covers put over every fireplace in the house. And those covers are still there. But what's kind of creepy about them is there's 2 angels on the front that look just like the boys that died in the chimney. Those are still on every fireplace in the house still today. Now, the house was sold in 1930. They made it into a funeral home. And in 1980, the funeral home closed and became a bed and breakfast inn. They don't let children stay here, but it's very strange. People are in here and will report the sounds of little kids running up and down the stairs, running up and down the halls, giggling, knocking on the doors, saying things like, "Come and play with us." But nobody dares open their doors after midnight here. Now, straight down here where you see the little light, that's where they used to bring the dead bodies. They'd bring them down there, drain the blood, and pump them full of formaldehyde. That's where they make your breakfast if you stay at the Keel House Inn.
I just saw somebody do it down the hall.
You heard about that one?
No.
No. Well, over here to the left, this is a real creepy thing. This is called 1790. It's an inn. And a young lady came here to marry the owner. She was 19 years old. She was going to marry a 55-year-old man. And this was basically the only reason she did it was for money. She got free passage from Europe. And a woman brought her over, but she lost her desire when she got here. She said, "I'm not going through with it." And the old woman said, "What do you mean? I paid all this money. I paid to bring you over here. How dare you change your mind on me?" And she said, "Well, I just can't do it." And she got so angry, she pushed her out the window and she broke her neck. See the mannequin in the window?
Oh
Third floor, white dress, black hair.
Oh my God, that's.
Take a picture.
Oh my
That's
God,
her.
it's not.
Just a
That's
mannequin,
not
of course. But if you want to stay there, you've got to sign a waiver. Because you've got the ghost of Anna and the woman who pushed her out the window. Two ghosts. There's many things that Anna does. She hides her
that's really
underpants and
freaky.
she takes costume jewelry and she does things of that nature. She's a bit playful, you see. But the other one pushes you off the edge of your bed. Now, if you want that room, you got to sign the papers. They'll take the mannequin, put it under your bed because they want to get it out of the window, so you don't have to look at that. But there she sits under your bed. Now, over here to the right is called the Owens Thomas house. 12 slaves lived in that little building on the right. They're the ones who worked on the mansion. Now, the ceilings of the slave quarters are all light blue. Light blue because the slaves believed that light blue paint could keep ghosts away. See, the Africans believed that ghosts couldn't cross water. And the light blue paint would fool the ghosts, they thought. And it might have worked. Now, this is the main house. If you walk through the rooms, you look up at the portraits on the walls. Old, gray portraits of the people who lived here. They all kind of look a little scary and mean already, but one thing is more disturbing, and that's that the eyes follow you as you walk from room to room through this house. The Owens Thomas house. If you go by here very late at night, you know, when everybody's gone to bed, you'll hear what sounds like a party going on inside this house. It's like the ghosts of the people who died here having a big celebration. A really big room.
It's just almost 8th grade.
Did she trip?
Oh my God, so bad. She was staring at us and she freaking hit the curb.
Oh my
I
God.
thought she was gonna eat it.
SCAD! SCAD! I love you, SCAD! SCAD!
What's your connection with SCAD?
We want.
That's why we're here.
We're here for SCAD.
Oh, oh, well. I guess it's a company town, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, I'm not connected to SCAD. Well, actually, I tutor a student at SCAD.
Cool.
Yes. The first person they hung here was actually a woman who had been raped. She killed the person who raped her, and they tried her for murder, and
Aww.
but then she was pregnant. They had to hold off for 8 months, and then they hung her after she gave birth. Then the child died naturally. And she and the baby are both buried in our first cemetery, which is this whole city block and Oglethorpe in front of it.
Aww.
So you have these boutiques. You wouldn't know it, but there's dead bodies under the floor. You know, the glass shop, these nice little places, Right Square Cafe. 1,400 dead bodies under there. Fingers and toes are probably dissolved now, but the larger bones would still be there. And you'd know they were skeletons if you dug them up.
Spines.
There's about a 25% mortality rate within a few years of coming here. Yellow fever, malaria, or in some cases dysentery. Over to the right you see two American flags. That's Foley House. They found human remains in the Foley House in 1990 when they were making a cut through the wall to make a doorway from one building to the next. It was a surprise for them because when the bricks fell in, the man's body fell in with it.
Oh my God.
Yes. Theater across here looks like it's a 1950s movie theater, but it's really a much older theater than that. There was a fire in the late 1940s, and they made the theater over as a movie theater to make it look modern at the time. But it was actually an 1818 theater where John Wilkes Booth, the actor that assassinated the President Lincoln, performed. And Lincoln was the first U.S. president to be embalmed, by the way. This hotel here, this Desoto Hilton, was the location of a gruesome thing in 2008. A soldier from Fort Benning had too much to drink at a local bar called Pinky Masters. He wandered into the hotel and didn't wander out again. Apparently he went inside the air handler of the air conditioning system and got cut up in the fan blades. He bled to death in there, and his body lay there for 12 days before he was discovered. But he was in the air system so that all the smell of his body was broadcast through the hotel. This building over here is the Sorrel Weed House. The courtyard back there is where a woman named Dolores Sorrel took her life back in 1850 when she found her husband was having an affair with a teenage servant girl named Molly up front. They find Molly then hanging from the floor joist 1 month later. It's been on several television documentaries featuring haunted houses, and it's on an hourly ghost tour. The land we're driving over now is where a good bit of the siege of Savannah took place. In October of 1779, 1,100 Continental soldiers died and bled to death in fierce combat in this immediate vicinity. And when the fighting was done, the British disposed of the bodies. We don't know what they did, though. You know, they wouldn't have burned them. They would have most probably buried them in some way, but there's no graveyard near here, so we believe they used the trenches that the soldiers had dug, and they simply put the bodies in there and pushed the sand over them. A sea captain and his wife decided to build a beautiful house here on the edge of the park. He was actually born in Canada. He's got an interesting life history, but I won't get into that. They couldn't have children, so they adopted from a little unwed teenage mother that Aaron Churchill knew. They raised this one little girl here. The three of them lived here. This is the house here to the right. Now, when the little girl was 14 years old, she came down those stairs. She looked into the parlor, and there was her father embracing a woman who was not Lois, his wife. Well, Lottie scampered up the stairs without being noticed and went into her room and thought about what she'd seen. And the more she thought about it, the more worked up she got. She got the idea in her head that her father might abandon them, and the two women would then be on the street, and she just couldn't imagine that happening. So she took action. She got some poisonous oil of oleander, mixed it with the tea, and served it to the woman. And the woman died of poisoning. No one suspected this. No one thought for a minute there was foul play. So the plan was working beautifully. And then they go off to bury her the next day at the Bonaventure Cemetery. And after the service was over, Aaron Churchill puts his arm around Lottie and says, "You know, Lottie, you're 14 years old now, and you can understand certain things better than maybe you could have years ago. Today we buried your birth mother." And Lottie was like, "Oh my God, this is unbelievable." So she didn't want to let on that she knew, that she'd murdered her mother, and she didn't want to, spill the beans and be considered a murderer, but she was under tremendous psychological stress. She was already a little bit mentally off to begin with, and this drove her over the top. She lost her mind, and she had to be institutionalized at the insane asylum on the other side of the park. And that's where she lived until the 1950s, when she finally died of old age there. Now, if you stay here at the bed and breakfast, many people have noted a little girl appears, about age 14, at the foot of the stairs. She'll only be there for about 2 seconds. You'll see her, she's shy, she looks away from you, and when you look back at her, she disappears, and that's all you see. There's one other strange phenomenon that occurs here in this inn, and that is there's individual television sets in all the rooms, but no matter what television show you've been watching most recently, when you hit the on button, it'll always turn on in the middle of a documentary of some kind of murder investigation. Apparently she's interested in that kind of stuff. We're going out to Laurel Grove Cemetery now. It's a 155-acre cemetery where there's 88,000 people buried. It used to be a rice plantation in the 1700s.
And a playground.
Yes, we always put one out by our
Lovely.
cemeteries for some unknown reason.
That's great.
Just in case the children are...
Well, you know what's ironic about it is right on the other side of that brick wall there are 606 babies buried. It's called Baby Land. Yes, that's what I said, ew. We can go check out the ew if you're into it. There's plenty of ew in this cemetery.
Somebody's TV is on.
That's the groundkeeper's house over there.
I love orbs. It's one of the few things I have experienced.
We have slave graves here, tens of thousands.
That one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Which one?
Wait, scroll back to that one. I love that. It looks so creepy.
Yes.
It looks like a ghost darting across the camera.
I'll take the ball.
That was freaky.
I can't tell if that was a. Was that a It sounded like a person, right? Okay, I was gonna say.
It was. Yeah.
I mean, you know, Daddy, he does those sirens with his mouth and freaks us out.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Number 28. They could never resolve the weird noises, so people just got used to them.
Weird noises on the trolley?
Yeah, it sounded like
Like-
a little trapped bird or something, or child crying or something, and they couldn't quite make it out.
That's really creepy. I just got chills just because of that. Like, we've been talking about dead bodies, but that creeps me out. It like, the child cries when it's near the grave, like, it just makes you wonder, like, wow. Adult toy stores. Savannah upscale. Adult toy stores celebrating 40 years. Oh.
Look at this mother-daughter perfect little picture.
Yeah, what is that?
You know, they
about?
went to the local Christian school here in Savannah, the Savannah Christian.
I'm sure they did.
Yeah, they did.
Oh my goodness.
They're such good capitalists.
That's part of the tour. Wow. That's part of the tour right there. Wow. Adult toy stores. I know, right? They look so happy. Make that our Christmas card photo this year. Great picture. Forsyth Mansion.
This is where if you had yellow fever, you'd be brought, they would bleed you, meaning they would make you bleed into a bowl of, like a little salad bowl. And when you filled up your little salad bowl of blood, they would stop the bleeding. And then they would, check you out. And if you were vomiting black blood from your stomach, they would make you swallow mercury. They called it quicksilver back then. It was very poisonous. But the idea was that you were supposed to make you vomit violently and get all the black blood out of your stomach. But that did no good for anybody. By the time you were vomiting black blood, you were pretty much dead. You'll be dead within 3 days. Now there's a morgue that's underground. It's still part of this building, and it goes back to its earliest days as a hospital. The morgue has been sealed off with a set of new steel doors, and then there's a tunnel that leads away. Actually, the morgue goes all the way up to the edge of the park. It's underground, from the edge of the building to the edge of the park where that car's going over. And then there's a tunnel that goes underneath the park. Adjacent to the tunnel is a room with a stone table and a sink. And further down, closer to the fountain, is another room that's a few steps down at a lower level that has standing water in it, and some human remains dating back to the Civil War were found in the water. Why they're there, we have no idea. But we do know that this place has had a lot of pain and suffering and sorrow here. It was a hospital in the early days, and then later it was an insane asylum, but they had these operating rooms, so what they decided to do is give everybody that came here a lobotomy. Pretty much the entry to get in. And then they performed crude electroshock treatments to people to try to help them with their maladies, but that usually didn't do much good, so they would go to another thing. They would do experimental things to people here. And that's where they really crossed the ethical line. That's where they sort of became Nazi-like over here with the forced surgeries on the insane. And then later, the federal government shut the place down. They said, anyone who wants to leave may leave. You no longer are locked up here. And all the crazies came out that front door, you know, all free, you know, after all those years. And that's when I got the job driving the hearse. No, but this is where Lottie Churchill was locked up all of her life. She lived here until she was 50. She might have been lobotomized too.
So every hearse tour is a little different?
Yes, well, we're all different, and they let us kind of do our own thing. We've got one guy who kind of goes into character, you know, and he, you know, will jump out and scare you, and he's, people enjoy that, but I can't do that. I mean, I'm not an actor, so I can't really be something I'm not. But he is an actor, so that's why he does that.
Okay.
A lot of people like that, but there's some people who say, oh, it's kind of hokey, you know. So, what do you want, history or histrionics, you know? Well, I mean, I could probably do 2 entirely different tours and not show the same things.
Wow.
But even then, there's a limit to the ghost stories, because most of our ghosts, you know, just about every house in Savannah has had somebody die in it. And if you talk to the people, they would tell you, oh, well, we hear them sometimes, you know, upstairs. But that's all you really have. You don't have a whole ghost story out of that. You just say there's some kind of ghost story upstairs, you know. I mean, we are a real city with real history, and, you know, I mean, like, for example, that cemetery I took you to, Hollywood would make that for a movie, you know. They would try to make a movie set look like that.
Yeah.
That would be what they'd be replicating.
Okay.
So, you know, now Hollywood could probably make a better ghost story, you know, but it's going to be filled with details, you know. And our ghost stories generally don't have so much detail. They're just kind of little bits and pieces of somebody lived here and now his ghost lives on because we saw the man in the red coat walk through the room, you know.
Are there any ghost hunters that live here in Savannah?
Well, I know that there's, I mean, Savannah, Georgia being the most haunted city in the country, we get large groups of, you know, people that are very into the paranormal.
Stay epic, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
We're laughing so hard because